So, thank you very much for joining us on the Security Space podcast this week, mate. So the title of this one will be "Screw You, Cyber." And before we get into it, before we get into what that actually means and where it's all coming from, are you okay just to let everybody know a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Nick. My name is Keith Price. I've been working in cybersecurity now for, about 22 years. I come from a heavy technical background. Before that, I was in IT. I was with the U.S. military for a total of 25 years. And now I live and operate just outside of Cambridge under my own limited company where I provide consulting and advisory, sort of virtual CISO services. And my current client I've been with for 2 years now, they don't want to let me go, which tells me I'm doing all right, is Envision Pharma Group, where I came in after they had suffered a ransomware breach and helped them recover their business and then establish the security program. So that's me in a nutshell. I enjoy working with programs like Caps Lock and ACP, mentoring folks who want to get into the industry. And that's where I seem to have the most fun during the day, is when I'm talking with people who are either at the beginning of their journey moving into cybersecurity, or they're looking for help and advice, moving up to the next level in their career. So, yeah, we went with Screw You, Cyber. So, if I can basically shed some light, I'm taking this. The view is I am not a cyber person in this discussion. I'm giving you the view of someone like a CIO, a CTO, a
Okay.
CFO, a director of IT, someone who's not worked in cyber, but you know what? They're stuck with working with cyber now because of the way of the world. And to give a little bit of view of where they're coming from, and also to include people who are trying to get entry-level cyber jobs when there just aren't many true
Yeah.
entry-level jobs. So kind of coming from that view, I might get some hate from my community, but I'm hoping that people will take this, for what it is sort of like an introspective devil's advocate view on our profession around some of
Yeah. No, no, and no, to be honest with you, you'll be surprised. Like the amount of cynical conversations I've had on the podcast around sort of like what is sort of what is wrong with the industry, but it's not coming from a place of like, oh god, I hate my job, because the people like love cyber, they love the industry, but as with any industry, it's just like what can actually be done better. Do you know what I mean? So I think I did very well in terms of doing a diplomatic start there, just kind of flip that very well. But to go into it then, so why is there such a cynical sort of like that, oh screw you cyber, like why is there quite negative connotations associated with the industry? Where does it come from, Keith?
Well, I guess I'll start at the top to start with. So with CISOs and CSOs and so forth, um, only recently has our profession sort of transitioned to supporting, more supporting the business from a quality and a safety perspective. A friend of mine, Greg Vandergast, very rightfully pointing out, that cyber needs to try and steer away from the reactive place that we've been in the last few decades and move more into business enablement, again, from the quality perspective. How can cyber and the problem is there's a lot of pushback against that. There's a lot of folks, I'll be honest, there's a lot of prima donnas in our industry. We're compensated very well. We have a very hard to find skill set. So there's a little bit of a rock star mentality in our career. And, and that can be grating to others in the business when, they see us as an inhibitor, right? So, they have this big project, they have this big idea, and they want to go forward with it. Oh, but now we got to bring cyber in, and we got to get their opinion, and they're going to do a risk assessment, and they're going to say no, or they're going to say yes, but, or oh, and which I just want to get on with the business, supporting the business. And so cyber, again, traditionally it's been seen that way. I see it changing. I do see a lot of senior leaders out there that kind of have seen the light and said, look, if I want to influence or have influence and have allies in the business, then I first have to become an influencer and an ally to the rest of the business, right? I can't expect them to all come and kneel at the temple or the altar of cyber. It has to really be either, the other way around or collaborative, right? 50-50. And in some ways, almost we maybe should give up a little bit more of ourselves. The MBA CISOs that I see, they're very good at that. They come from a place of business. They speak the language, they understand, and then they hire in technical experts to support their mission. And they seem to do much better at the higher echelons and the board advisory and the executive leadership. So again, starting from the top, I would say that's sort of why it's been difficult for us. And we've been saying this amongst our group. What do we got to do? What do we got to change? And it's become evident, but some of us are slower to adopt.
Yeah, and just to come in on that point, Keith, is I just did a pod yesterday actually with Stu Coulson, and we raised a similar point in the sense of before we were getting it wrong in the sense of like we were speaking like tech and all these like, oh, that's not going to work, this is not going to work, this is what you got to do, like CEOs and CIOs who well let's just say CEOs for the time being, where they're not going to be motivated to they're just going to switch off. As with any human nature, if you don't like if you're not speaking the right thing to the right audience, you're just gonna be like, oh, it's a load of gobbledygook and I don't understand, so I'm gonna switch off from you. They're not gonna be motivated to get on side with you. Maybe a CTO would, because obviously you're speaking their language, but like it's exactly what you're saying. Like at board level, you need to explain it in their terms, don't you? Okay, like okay, if we're not secure in this area, if we get hit, this is going to be like the cost of this the business. Then bang, the CEO is going to be like cost. It's like okay, what is that? Do you agree with that sort of view as well? Is that sort of what you were saying as well?
Yeah, and I've been guilty of it, especially in my military time, 25 years in the military, because a lot of those senior leaders in the military, generals and colonels and so forth, they do speak a more technical knowledge, or they just let it happen in the briefing. You're almost at the tail end of the briefing. Oh, we have 145,000 vulnerabilities across blah blah blah, and they're just they're looking through their diary to where am I going to have lunch? So again, I've been guilty of it. Coming out of the military, I was quickly schooled. I decided, I need to get some executive mentors that are outside the IT and cyberspace. So I reached out to some CFOs and CEOs and basically said, look, what do you need from me? What do you need from us? Our communities. And it was sort of like Reddit's explain it like I'm five. Don't come at me with thousands of statistics and metrics that mean all to the business. Like you said, I want to hear what are the real threats to the business. What are the threats to our industry? Where do we sit compared to our competitors, right? And across various metrics, right? But they have to mean something. Otherwise, it's just da 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 to them. Again, white noise. They know they have to listen to it, but they're not absorbing it and they don't understand it. So again, it's up to us to go. Like I said to my CFO here, I said, how do you like to be briefed? How do you like to be communicated to? Is it through walls of text? Is it through visual aids? Is it through storytelling? Because everyone has their own way of ingesting information, right? So one of the first questions you should ask those people that you're briefing is how do they digest that information, and that's what you should tune yourself into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So from that then, how can we as an industry then, how can we go against this, these negative connotations, and how can we actually build better relationships within business then? Because even today in 2023, sometimes cyber is just seen as an extension to IT and not our own vertical. So what can we do better?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the greatest ROI around security that I've witnessed and produced has been around employee awareness programs, right? So going out, it's a grassroots effort, right? You start there with the entire employee base. I have, I think it's every 2 months where I do a cyber coffee event, and it's around relevant information to the audience. So it might be how best to use public Wi-Fi safely and securely, might be how to use ChatGPT, in accordance with business policies and things like that. And it's a 5 minute, we have an LMS where they can prepare if they want to, and then I have a 5 minute where I discuss the topic. But again, it's got to be in language that they understand. And then we do 25 to 30 minutes of interaction, right? So I get the audience saying, "Oh, what's this?" And what do you? And again, I say at the beginning, this is not just for Envision life. This is for your whole life, because you're an employee of Envision, but you have kids and teenagers and parents, and everyone uses the internet, and you probably have questions on how to best protect and keep safe your family members as well. So I expanded outwards to show that I actually do care about their lives outside the 9 to 5 in Envision, right? Because it's important that they feel supported, right? From there, I find word quickly spreads, and then I'm invited to business unit events where I'm talking to the business units, and the director invites me, and then over the few months it seems that I get invited to more and more, until finally I'm at a board level, giving a presentation on the latest ransomware gangs that are targeting our industry, right?
Yep.
But again, also part of it is making yourself valuable to those senior leaders and managers in what they're doing, right? It might not even be security related. So the head of HR needs help reviewing the job description process, so I help with that. The chief financial officer has a new finance SaaS platform that she needs testing to sanity. Oh yeah, I'll be a guinea pig to help you with that. So again, it's about making yourself available to them in their worlds as well, to show that you honestly do care about the things that they're working on, and not just the things that keep them up at night.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So from what you said there, I did a podcast with Tiago, and it was all about how to actually win business with InfoSec, and it's clearly when the two were sort of working in parallel with one another. Then, so like when the two streams are working together, then like how can how can that actually? Firstly, how do you even get to that step where it's just like, yeah, okay, we're on the same page. This is, security is absolute a priority for the company. And then secondly, how can you use that, leverage that as a business need in the sense of like, okay, we can actually say like, because we're so secure, we can go and win these contracts, these lines of work, we
Mm.
can do X, Y, and Z. So it's a bit of a two-sided question, that one. But what's your shorter thoughts on that?
Yeah, something that I've seen growing in popularity lately is for businesses to have a page on their site that not just covers their privacy and their ISO 27001, their SOC 2, whatever, but also highlights some of the security team, some of the certifications or the qualifications or the experience of, say, the CISO, and then maybe the head architect, the head engineer, and it basically shows you've got some badging and things that people identify. But if you put that on your public facing website, and I'm not talking about putting out there that we use Rapid7 or that we identifying Checkpoint as our technology, not that, but being at a vendor neutral layer to show these are the things that we do within this company. This is how we value cybersecurity, not to just meet the baseline levels, but, to take our maturity one or two or three steps higher,
Yep.
because we want to win business. And that's a way that you can differentiate business where it's passive, right? The potential clients are looking through your website and they're directed to this page and they say, oh my gosh, okay, these guys got a world-class team. They're
Yep.
putting some revenue, they're putting some money into building up their capability and so forth. But then also on the other side, to not just be a cost center in cyber, you have to be able to help protect revenue, and there's different ways that can be done. So, like from my perspective, I'm an internal CISO contractor, and some of the things that I've done. So after the ransomware breach, they went and they bought one or two of every cyber product, right? As you do.
Yep.
So my first job was to go in and say, okay, we don't need two of those. We don't
Yeah.
even need
That's
that, because right. So shave 100K off the budget right off the bat. Very happy executive. but you're still at the same security posture. And okay, I've read recently that posture is not a great word. So stance, security
Really?
stance.
Why?
No, it's fine. I'm willing to adapt. Um, the other piece is cyber insurance, right? So we had a ransomware breach. Who's gonna insure Envision when they just had a ransomware breach? Well, I've proved that we've improved our security stance, our risk management, da 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 da. We got insurance and at a lower premium, right? So right off the bat, my executive is like, this guy's paying for himself. Okay, so whilst I'm not generating revenue, I'm also protecting my own costs.
Yep.
Brent Deterting is another guy who's big on LinkedIn saying, look, you don't have to spend a ton of money to prove your value, right? It's not about that. It's about doing things smartly, safely, securely, and again, as Greg said, with a quality focus.
Mhm. Okay. So, with that being said, then there is a few, not contradictions, but when it comes to risk, when it comes to security, safety, quality, all four of them, to get them working in tandem, it's a big ask, and sometimes one can take away from the other. So is that one of the downsides to security, is the sense of like it's so difficult to get them all working in tandem, or is it only difficult if you don't do it right? Is it only difficult if you don't have the backing of the board? Is it only difficult because you can't win the hearts and minds of the organization? Talk to me about this sort of area where it's like I can't do it all, therefore I can't do my job right.
Yeah, you definitely need to be able to have those allies in the rest of the business. If you don't have that, then nothing you do will really make a difference. You're going to be constantly banging your head against a wall. You're going to be constantly reacting. And so, if I just take it, from okay, let's use HR as an example, right? So if they don't have a good onboarding, leavers, joiners, remainers process and policy, to where we're looking at like account reviews and account access and things like that, then that's going to have a negative impact on what you do as a security professional, right? So you have to be able to prove to them that you're going to be, a solid partner in building this thing. It's not a case of like, here you go, HR, it's your job, you got to do it, good luck, and make sure you do it right. It's
Yep.
a case of I'm going to walk through this with you. We're going to hold each other's hand through this thing. Same thing with finance, same thing with IT,
Yep.
obviously. You have to be able to show that you're going to save them time and money
Yep.
by implementing the things that you want to do from that quality perspective. And from a safety perspective, I mean, anyone who's done like the CISSP, uh, people will tell you take off your IT or your cyber hat when you do that CISSP, because what you need to be thinking about is safety, people, money, right? In that order. And that's how the higher level security training and education is, because it should reflect what you're doing in that time of your career, as a senior
Yep.
cybersecurity. So again, you have to prove that you're an ally and not just trying to influence to get what you want,
Yep.
as a cybersecurity person, because otherwise you're just not like patching, a simple thing like patching and updating systems. If you don't help the IT team with setting up the processes and everything else, then they're just going to go, yeah, we'll do it when we can do it.
Yep.
We'll hope to, if it's critical, we'll try and get to it as soon as possible. But then again, it becomes very reactive. And instead of establishing those protocols and processes for business as usual, and then looking at continual improvements by getting feedback from that team on what could be done better. Again, you're just patching 0 days all day long, and you're not ever going to get ahead of the game.
Yeah. Um, and I really like how with what we spoke about so far, it really is on. It's more on the sort of the internal, the granular level sort of side of the technical side of security as well. And I've got sort of like one last question before I want to just make it. I want to bring it out a little bit. And it is sort of it's on DevSecOps and this secure by design methodology. And it's like why? Well, firstly, like how big of an advocate are you on it? And secondly, why are more organizations not moving towards this way of working? Is it politics? Is it cost? Like, I don't seem to. Everybody asks, it seems to be slightly a little bit different. So when it comes to DevSecOps, then what's your sort of view on it, Keith?
Well, if there's one question that was going to stump me a little bit, it's this one. It's outside of CloudSec. I do, my opinion is centered around CloudSec. So I've been working on an Azure, cloud first transformation the last 2 years, and we were sorely lacking in that DevSecOps space for talent on the team. We had gone out to various consultancy firms. We had gone out to various IT firms. The problem is it was so disjointed, and so there was no long-term plan. It was just sort of like let's do this in these steps so we can make some progress and we can show some progress, but there was no target operating model. And then finally, after a year search, we finally got ourselves a great Azure architect / engineer guy, and now we're starting to really, because we have somebody on the inside, and I think that's really important, is to have someone on the inside. You can have your consultants and your contractors to start something to kick it off, but it's really important then to also build your internal function. And same thing with application security. We've just started, our business is applications and SaaS platforms, but we didn't have an AppSec function, and we've just now started that. Again, moving an internal function over, someone who has a lot of institutional knowledge and who is self-developed into security. Again, having that internal function, someone who has that buy-in, who has the long-term vision for the business is very important. And again, then you mesh, the various levels of outsourced and FTE leadership and so forth. So again, I don't have a very good detailed answer because I don't have a lot of experience. For me, it's again that 30,000 foot view. But I do think it's important. I think it's tough to do it right, because if you start wrong like we did, you've lost a year or more, and you're spending money on really not accomplishing much.
Yeah, and that seems to be it, and it's why I've not sort of like had any one fixed answer yet. It is sort of like as with anything, like to make something leaner, you've got to sort of you've got to trying to trim off the fat of somewhere else, and you've got to kind of get it together. But like you say, you might not get it right straight away, and I don't think there's a polished a polished product yet. There's definitely versions of it out there in the industry, and organizations that will do it right, but like you say, it's not widely they've embedded yet. Like I say, we're still, as we discussed earlier on in the pod, some organizations still see cyber as part of just its general IT. So like you say, we're still sort of more on that side of the spectrum as opposed to that. So like I say, I think it's more of a conversation like looking forward to the next 5-10 years before it's like fully sort of segregated. So I would just move it a little bit more left field, a little bit more towards my field actually, Keith. And it's more of a case of like in terms of like screw you cyber then. So in terms of recruitment, like obviously, I spoke to a lot of people about sort of like, there's a lot of sort of bad press when it comes to hiring in security, and it's not this lean model yet. Why do you think it is? Why do you think firstly there's the view that there's a skills gap, and secondly, why do some organizations just struggle to sort of actually hire in cyber when, me speaking totally biased, I speak to so many excellent people who are just struggling to get a role at the moment. So what's your view on recruitment in cyber at the moment, Keith?
Yeah, so I guess from the recruiter's perspective, it's been tough lately. It's been a harsh market, I think, for a lot of professions, and that was sort of triggered from the mass layoffs in the U.S. But more generally speaking, I think if I look at the mid-level of cyber, we're okay. The sort of 5 to 10 years, or maybe even 5 to 12 years range of hiring, I think we're doing all right. We got a lot. It's the doer category. It's people who have a lot of experience in a short period of time, right? And so finding those skill sets seems to be a little bit easier. Now, the top end, it's tough because there's a lot of guys and gals at the top end who've been strategic CISOs for a number of years, and currently, again, there's a need for more doer heads of security versus CISOs. And there's a lot of discussions going around LinkedIn now about what's the difference between the two. And like,
Yeah.
I would actually class myself the last 2 years more of a head of InfoSec, which was my title then, a CISO, because I didn't have I didn't have a team really behind me. I had dotted lines to folks, but it's tough for people to move. They've been doing strategic CISO for 5-10 years, to then, there's not much out there on the horizon currently for that. And people are still getting burnt out at those top levels, and they're looking for something else to try and ease the pain, and there's just not much out there. But then where we really want to cover is the entry level stuff. So when you see an entry level, like a truly entry level job, advertised on LinkedIn, it's global. It's a global event. This one thing, they'll have 1,000 applicants from all over the world. Everybody's clapping and shouting, "Hey, an entry level role where it's truly entry level," and they don't require 10 years of other IT,
Yeah.
And I get it. There's cyber jobs where you should have IT experience, right? That we all know this, but there are cyber jobs, and even in those worlds, like SOC, pen testing, sys analysis, things like that, you can still hire entry level and build them up. The problem is, and I see this, and this is where the sort of screw you cyber thing comes into play, is I see senior leaders saying, we need to produce more entry level jobs that are truly entry level. Stop with this and stop with that. And then like a month later, their company is advertising an entry level job with 5 years experience. And I go, yeah, how can you be taken seriously? How can we trust you? How can entry level people trust you when you're saying one thing and you're not, and you're actually doing the complete opposite? So it's possible. The problem is a lot of security teams are so stressed and strained. Even getting that new entry level person to have to train them up over 6 to 12 months removes capability from the team to be able to do what they're entrusted to do. So it's tough, because that hiring manager may want to bring in more entry and train them up and develop them, but their remit prohibits them from doing so. So they may see, I got to hire somebody with 5 years experience because I just need this now, or I've needed it for a year or two, or a higher level senior manager. I need that, type of skill set. So, but what we see then is we see less, we see less flow through the career field. So it's almost like everybody in cyber starts out mid-career. And so you have no opportunity then to teach people to become good leaders and supervisors of those entry-level people. So by the time they become supervisors and leaders, they're at 7 to 10 years. They're now managing people with 5 years experience, and they haven't had any experience yet actually leading, being a leader. And it's tough then to just pick that up and run with it without having that, experience. So it not only hurts the industry in that we have, we have less people who've been promised a role in cybersecurity by whatever institution that they got their training from. But now we're also letting down those first line managers and supervisors because they're not getting the right experience being a leader. So it's a twofold problem.
Definitely. No, and I think that's yeah, quite an interesting place to actually leave it. So I hope that actually sparks a little bit of engagement in the comment section below. So if anybody has any questions for Keith, anything that he's raised today, where you'd like any advice on, if you disagree with Keith, hopefully we can hopefully get something going as well. But yeah, any information that you might need from Keith, I'll make sure that we can get contact information below. But once again, Keith, thanks so much for joining us on the security space.